Hey, get over here. He's calling all nights.
Oh, jeez. Here come the nerds. It's time to talk to the interested and interesting.
I was wondering when the nerd would come.
And here's your host, Mike Thayer.
Welcome to the Calling All Nerds and Hype and Play, and the podcast where we talk to the interesting and the interested and hype and play. All right. Welcome to Calling All Nerds. It's Mike Thayer talking to the interested and the interesting. So this week we talked to Dr. Michael Hill. He's a good friend of mine, a neighbor, and he's a guy who has a lot of self-discipline and pushes himself to all sorts of crazy limits. I talked to him this week about intermittent fasting. So my wife had read a book about intermittent fasting with some of the ladies in the neighborhood, and they were going to get together and discuss it. And she had read the book, and we were talking, and she's like, "This thing says that people can fast for like months." And I was like, "What are you even talking about?" So she goes to this little book discussion with the ladies, and she came back and she's like, "Yeah, Michael Hill down the street just fasted for like 7 days in a row, like no food." I was like, "What?" So I had to talk to him. I've been meaning to talk to him for a while because, as I said, he's an interesting dude. And so I sat down and talked to him about intermittent fasting. Neither of us are nutritionists. He's a surgeon, so he's got a lot more background in sort of medicine, obviously, than I do. But this was just something cool, something he's been able to do. It's helped him drop a bunch of weight. And then I do a little experiment myself. Right when I left for the interview, or after the interview, I did some intermittent fasting. And then we talk about it in the second half of the interview. So this interview is split up into two parts. There's the first hour, which is me talking to Michael Hill about intermittent fasting and all these preconceived notions we have in our life, like you can't go 7 days without food. And how sometimes those things are good and sometimes those things are bad. They hold us back. They keep us from sort of investigating parts of our life where there's a lot of value. So we talk about that, and then we roll right into UFC 229. The Conor McGregor fight was coming up in a few days. Conor McGregor, Khabib Nurmagomedov. I always get his last name screwed up. Nurmagomedov. Anyway, Khabib. That fight was a couple of days afterwards, and Monica, Michael's wife, was actually at the fight. So first hour, we talk about the lead up to the fight and intermittent fasting and all sorts of stuff, pushing your body to all sorts of limits. Then there's a break. I meant to come back a couple of days afterwards. I came back a month afterwards. So then talked to Michael about kind of how my fasting went, and then talked to his wife about how awesome and crazy the UFC event was. And it was incredible for her. For a bunch of different reasons that I'll let her explain, which were pretty cool. We have a really good UFC fan scene here in our neighborhood. We host stuff either at their house or my house, other people's houses. We have a big sort of neighborhood party, get together. We're big UFC fans, and kind of wanted to talk shop a little bit. What am I doing right now? So a little update with what I am doing these days. So I just got back my draft for the second book in the Epic Adventures of the Techno Wizard, The Uncharted Lands, and I am diving in with both feet or head first or whatever today. I need to turn this next draft around in like a week in order to get it to the proofreader, in order to get it back in time to get this thing published by Christmas. So it's going to be crazy. I'm going to be putting in some very, very long hours in the next week or so to do it. Anyway, I've been able to incorporate a lot of the feedback from the beta readers and the editor, and I think it's going to come along pretty nicely. So I'm very pleased with the feedback I got from the folks that read it. So hopefully it'll be a pretty awesome book when it's all said and done. And then, I think I talked last week, I've been getting a lot more sort of promo material stuff in from my cover designer, and the lady from Italy who does my map is working on that. I've seen the first couple drafts, and it's kind of going back and forth and tweaking it. So the book is coming together, getting the maps, getting the cover, getting the manuscript, and then hopefully in the next month or so, I'll tie up all the loose ends and we'll be rolling. My other project, Danny Doubleday, I am like a chapter away from finishing the first draft. I had really pushed hard to finish the first draft before I got the manuscript back For Techno Wizard, I just didn't quite get there. The story ended up being twice as long as I had anticipated. I wanted to write kind of a real quick, short 15,000 word book, and it ended up being almost 30. It's going to be about 30 by the time it's said and done, which is still a third the length of Techno Wizard, but longer than I had originally set out for on this book. Not that the book is bloated, I just kept getting cool ideas, and the story expanded a bit. It went from being kind of targeted at first and second graders to probably targeted at fourth and fifth and sixth graders, which is about where the Techno Wizard is. So yeah, it's hard to tell shorter stories. And I have a tendency to ramble, but it's a really cool book. I'm having my nephews read it kind of as alpha readers, and they've loved it so far. So I'm gonna put that one to beta readers and then actually put it to agents. So it should be pretty cool. Anyway, that's my update. So we will get right now into the conversation with Michael Hill, and then there'll be a little break, and then we'll fast forward a month, and then we'll be with Michael and Monica. I do have to warn you, I had the camera on to record it so I could put it up on YouTube. I set the recorder down, and I never pressed record on the recorder. I am a genius. So the audio in the second half, or I guess the last third with Michael and Monica, is just from the camcorder, so it's not as good. So you will see a distinct change in the audio quality, but it's still good enough to hear. Should be okay. But anyway, without further ado, Mr. Dr. Michael Hill and his lovely wife, Monica. All right. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Mr. Taylor, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me in your wonderful home. Usually I'm only here doing a UFC event or dressed up in costume
Yes.
at some murder mystery dinner.
Occasionally sitting in a massage chair.
Yeah, so it's nice to be here for something a little different, a little change of pace. So I am here this week with Dr. Michael Hill. So you are a general surgeon. You also specialize in cancer.
Correct.
Breast cancer,
Thyroid
cancer,
colon cancer.
Yep. A man with many interesting stories. So kind of the theme this week that I wanted to talk about, because eventually we're going to get into some UFC stuff. We're going to get into some Conor McGregor stuff. I was like, how do I bridge the gap between the interesting things that Mr. Dr. Michael Hill is doing and UFC? And I think I found it. Okay. So it's being able to push your body to extreme limits. Okay? Yeah. And I think when we think of this, we think of like ultra marathoners or whatever else. But there are people all around us. There are Michael Hills amongst us who are doing these crazy things. And the big topic, kind of the hot topic right now, is intermittent fasting. Yeah. So Jill, the wives in the neighborhood, we're doing a book club. Jill was talking about this, and I'll be candid. Jill was talking about this book they were all supposed to read on intermittent fasting, and I remember Jill was reading it. She's like, "This book is ridiculous. It talks about intermittent fasting, but it's not just like eat during certain hours out of the day." She's like, "The person is talking about like not eating for like a week." And I was like, "That just can't be right." So we ragged on it for like a night. Yeah. And then Jill went to the conversation with the ladies, and they came back, and she's like, "Michael Hill didn't eat for a week." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "No." She's like, "Yeah, he didn't eat for a week." I was like, "No way." And so we kind of sat there, and none of us kind of admitted to it. None of us brought up the conversation from the night before.
Of how ridiculous it actually was. Yeah. Right.
And it was like, I thought it was impossible. And I talk about this in actually a podcast that came out. That was my first podcast with my brother. I think I've talked to you about this exact same thing. People sort of redefine what you think is possible. Absolutely. Like the guy juggling Rubik's Cubes. Right. I've used this example. I seem to come up with every one of my conversations.
The 4 minute mile. Like it was impossible until somebody did it, and then everybody could do it. Yeah. All of a sudden.
And it just changes your mind. And it's not like, again, I don't have a problem in my life where I'm stopped by my inability to understand juggling Rubik's Cubes, but it's the fact that someone can do something that I was positive was impossible. Right. And then this guy lives 7 houses away from me, and I know really well. And it's like, wait a second, this isn't some guy on YouTube. This is a guy down the street. So you have to tell me how you did this, how it's even possible.
So I first heard about this from my brother-in-law, who is like extreme in so many levels. Grinds his own wheat, drinks this like disgusting green goo every morning that he makes. And I was like, yeah, that sounds terrible. And as a physician, I was like, that's really bad for you, and was really against it. And then one of my coworkers, a physician's assistant, lost some weight and looked fantastic. And I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I did a little ketogenic diet for a little bit, but mostly it's intermittent fasting. Right. And I said, well, what is this? And he says, well, I just read this book called Primal Blueprint by Mark Sissons, which is an excellent book, by the way. And he just kind of made reference to it. And so then he ended up getting this other book. And so I read this book called The Obesity Code by Jason Fung, who's a doctor. He's a nephrologist and was treating all these patients with diabetes and monitoring these people on a fasting protocol. So I just want to clarify what fasting is, because for some cultures or religions or groups, it can mean different things. So Ramadan, people are not eating, they're fasting for a month, but they're just doing it from sun up to sundown.
Right.
You've got Mormon population, which doesn't believe they should be drinking water during that time. You've got people that will give up something, for Lent, which they might call fasting, depending on what it is they're giving up. So for me, in this situation, it was no calories. Okay, so
So air is in, water's in,
but
sunlight
but
definitely
it also
in.
means drinking. Okay,
Yeah.
and so I was drinking. I tried, Jason Fung, who's the writer of this book, is a huge fan of bone broth, which I tried a few times, which I didn't think was very good, actually. It's just like a chicken noodle soup without the chicken or the noodles. Okay, so it's like, I don't know, Monica, my wife, really likes the flavor of it. My brother, who also has lost a bunch of weight doing intermittent fasting, also really got into bone broth and really liked it. So you can make your own. You boil bones, put in a bunch of vegetables, and cook it. Or you just,
What's mom making tonight? Just pick a pot of bones.
Or you can just buy the thing. But what I did was just like water, some herbal teas, and then an electrolyte mix that I really like. And so I can say, as somebody who grew up in the Mormon church doing fasting like once a month for a 24-hour period,
Right.
being able to drink is a total game changer. It was so much easier. And so I was anticipating, because you start reading the book and the guy's like, the preface is by Jimmy Moore, who had lost a bunch of weight doing intermittent fasting. And he's telling his story, and he's like, the first time I did it, I did 7 days and then 21 days. And I was like, this is just nuts. And he says, just try it, and if you fail, like, just pick up where you left off. It's not that big a deal. And so I didn't stress about it. I didn't think about it. I didn't like premeditate it. I was just like, I'm like that far in the book. And I was like, I guess I'll start from right now.
And you hadn't even finished the book.
I hadn't even finished the book, and I was like, I'll just give it a try, and it was awesome. And so he talks about 3 different ways of incorporating fasting into your routine. You can have intermittent fast, which he calls like a compressed feeding window.
Right.
And so you would say from noon to 6 p.m. is when I'm going to eat, which means from 6 p.m. until the next day at noon, you're not going to take in any calories.
Right.
And again, I was looking at this from like my physician eye, thinking this is really bad. I mean, this is essentially starving, okay? And malnutrition has not traditionally done well for most cultures.
We have a large scale statistics on how this goes, right? Like there's
not many populations that have pulled it off effectively. Prison camp people mainly. And then, so that's a compressed feeding window, or you can do like an every other day thing, and so you might do it like a 24-hour period, 3 days a week or 2 days a week.
Yep.
Or you can do a little bit more of a prolonged fast, which he defines, I think, as 72 hours or more.
Okay.
And so, the option that I tried was a prolonged fast, and I did it once, and then subsequent to that I've done a couple of like 2 or 3 day fasts, and had fantastic results. And now I've gone to like a compressed feeding window. So the science behind it, or I guess the medical point of view, is dropping your insulin levels down. So we often associate insulin levels with diabetes, type 1 or type 2 diabetics, but it's for everybody. And so his key to success is figuring out a way to keep your insulin levels low. And so finding foods that trigger less of an insulin response and keeping your insulin levels down. So people will go on fad diets or flash diets or do something drastic. They'll drop a bunch of weight and then they will slowly gain the weight back.
Right.
And he says, and there's a lot of people now that support this with data and studies that now support it, that if you can get your insulin levels to drop down, you will reset your homeostatic point so that you're not going to regain the weight back. And so it has been incredibly liberating for me to do intermittent fasting. Also because it's so flexible. So the first time I did it, I'm reading this book and I was like, well, I'm just going to start.
Right.
And I didn't have like a goal of how long I was going to do it. I was just going to give it a try. And he says in there, day 2 is going to be the hardest day. And sure enough, it was kind of the hardest day. And I don't know if I was like pre-programmed, you know, he was like, day 2 is going to be hard, day 2 is going to be hard. And sure it was.
Yeah.
But he also said, you know, after that, you're going to be just fine. And I was totally fine. I've got a buddy that I play racquetball with. And I was like day 3.5, maybe day 4 into it. And I just like destroyed him at racquetball, like better than I'd ever played. And I just felt like this euphoric feeling. My thoughts were like ultra clear. I was like, you know, I hit nirvana. You know, I just felt like I was in this like perfect zen.
What's your secret, man? Bone broth.
Yeah, bone broth is the key. And finally, it was like day 6.5, and I was like, tomorrow's my daughter's birthday. Like, I should probably eat dinner with my family.
So what are the limits of this? So when does it become good, like stop being good for you and start being starving yourself? Because you can't go indefinitely on bone broth and electrolyte fluid, right?
It depends on where your starting point is. So in the book, he tells the story of this guy that fasted, you know, meaning water and a multivitamin only for over a year.
What?
But he started out at over 300 pounds, okay? So he has substantial reserves in his like fatty adipose tissue as a reserve. And so, you know, I was trying to do some healthy things and starting out, but I was like at 220 pounds, a little over 220 pounds.
Yeah.
Going into it, and now I'm at like 185, and so I'm not going to do prolonged things,
right,
because I'm right where I want to be as far as my weight is. But I will still intermittently use, you know, intermittent fasting to be able to maintain where I want to be.
So as long as you know, if you've got enough fat built up, enough sort of storage in the camel's hump, so to speak, and you're getting water and vitamins, you can ride that?
Right. And so, again, I was like, there's no way. This has got to be bad for your electrolytes. This has got to be bad for like all these things. And so Dr. Fung, when they were doing this initially, because they were thinking about this, they were monitoring all these things. They were doing like regular blood tests, you know, regular urine analysis, you know, all skin turgor, making sure they're not dehydrated, making sure they're not damaging their kidneys, looking at muscle, you know, what is this going to do to muscle, you know, stores, because the thought was, well, yeah, you'll be burning fat, but you'll also be wasting weight because you're going to be using muscle, and your body's going to like just eat your muscle away instead. And they didn't. They were following these patients with DEXA scans, which can look at your bone density, but also your proportion of fat and muscle. These people were not changing their muscle composition at all. They were selectively choosing the fat. And so chewing away the fat. So for those people, they were truly going into a state of ketosis, which is where your body will preferentially burn your fat stores over anything else. Like on a regular American Western diet would be like a carbohydrate-based diet. But you know, whether or not you decide to go into full ketosis or not, you can still use intermittent fasting to drive your insulin levels down.
So I've heard ketosis a lot on like Joe Rogan's podcast, and all the fighters talk about it. How do you click yourself over into ketosis?
Yeah. So ketosis is basically when your liver has used up all of your glycogen stores and you have burned your body's reserve that traditionally would come from carbohydrates or from sugars. And so I got there on accident 2 years ago when I was running a marathon.
It's like Narnia. It's like you're going through some closet. It's like, oh, ketosis.
I was all of a sudden at this light pole, and this minotaur was telling me to follow him. It was so much worse than following a minotaur. It was the worst feeling of my life. So I was running a marathon, And I was at like mile 21, and all of a sudden my body was deplete of my glycogen stores, and so runners call it hitting the wall. And
I hit that after a mile and a half 2 weeks ago.
It was terrible. It was like the worst feeling. So doing it under a controlled situation would be to control or to minimize or monitor your carbohydrate input. So you can get there by fasting. You can just minimize your carbohydrate intake, and for most people it's between 30 and 50 carbohydrates a day. If you're like a superb athlete, you could maybe have 100 carbohydrates per day. And then things that will speed it up will be like exercise, because you're going to burn through your glycogen stores. And so I've been into ketosis a few times, and I've checked that with urine dipsticks that'll show you your.
There's not some other sort of like
ketone
external
levels.
confirmation.
Well,
voice.
I can tell you, for me, I started like urinating like crazy. So as you break down your fat cells, you store a lot more water in your fat than you do in other things. So as soon as I was like in ketosis and breaking down my fat, I was urinating like crazy, and I was also drinking a ton, and
fat cells are just bursting.
Fat cells were just bursting. You could like see little puffs of evaporation coming off of me as it was happening. But I also checked using urine dipsticks, which apparently only work in the early stages of ketosis. Once you are like truly fat adapted, you'll reach a state to where you're not dumping them in your urine. And then I bought a like dirt cheap breathalyzer on Amazon. Of course. So you can buy like ones that'll measure your ketone levels. They're like $100 or something like that. I think I spent $12, but you have to buy the really inexpensive one. If you buy like a true like alcohol breathalyzer, most of them will just check like true ethanol levels. But the inexpensive ones that have the inexpensive diode or whatever the thing is that checks it will check your ketone levels. And so anyway, that was great. So I spent $12 and I could check in those two modalities. I've kind of gotten away from getting in ketosis, on a regular basis, but I would say overall I'm still at a way lower carbohydrate intake than I was before.
So you changed your, so now you're in, I'm assuming, a window, right? Like a feasting window?
Yeah, right. So I'm basically not eating breakfast. I'll get up and drink a large glass of cold water. And take my vitamins for the day. Vitamins, if you will.
Vitamins.
And then depending on the day and what I have planned, I either will or won't eat lunch. And so and then I eat basically whatever I want for dinner, but I've trimmed down the carbohydrates in dinner. So I'm not restricting how much I eat, just what I eat.
Okay.
And then, if I'm going to go have lunch with a friend, or if I have a big dinner or something, that I think has been the most liberating part of intermittent fasting, is it's incredibly flexible. So I can go out for lunch one day and eat something fantastic, and then it just means the next day I'm going to skip lunch. And so it all becomes a balance, and I don't feel restricted on what I can eat or how much I can eat. It's just when there's times of feasting, we should feast. If we have, we got UFC fight night coming up, I'm going to feast. I'm going to eat everything I shouldn't be eating. And then on Sunday, I'm probably going to scale it back and just eat less, because it's going to be the day after I've like totally gorged myself.
So I've done a little bit, like college years and stuff, I would not eat breakfast. I'd just blow right through lunch because I'd forget. I get locked into studying or whatever. So I was kind of doing it for a while, and then, the job at the refinery, I get really busy. I have to skip lunch a bunch of times, and I wasn't really getting much breakfast. And then when I quit and started writing full time, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get an exercise routine. I'll try this window thing, right? So I usually eat between 12 and 8. I don't have like a too small window, but it's a window, right? So I don't eat breakfast, all the same thing. Wake up, multivitamin, water. I lost like 7 pounds, and I've kind of hit a plateau. Part of it's because I just like injured myself left and right. I have like a bone spur in my foot, my back. I jacked my neck up like 2 weeks ago doing curls of all things. I don't know how that works, but I did. There's a way my body
has nothing to do with technique, I'm sure. If you hurt your neck doing curls, but
you don't like. I got caught right in the middle of my Bowflex. Was just trying to escape all the cables and jacked my neck up. I don't know. My body's horrible, and so anyway, I've kind of stayed away from exercise the last week or so, but I've kind of hit a little bit of a plateau, and I've been like toying with the idea. I was like, should I do a prolonged fast to try
So-
to kick me out of a plateau?
This will also be liberating for you. Jason Fung says 90 to 95% of your weight is related to your diet and has no relation to your exercise.
Right, which is what I've kind of found.
So, I mean, I'd kind of felt like it was maybe 50-50 and read a few things that talked about, well, maybe 70-30. And so you have to think about muscle and fat as kind of separate entities. And so your diet, which you can control with your carbohydrate intake and your intermittent fasting, will control the fat component, whereas your exercise is going to control your muscle component.
Right.
And so that was also liberating to feel like, oh my gosh, if I miss a workout, am I going to feel guilty about this or anything like that? No, I'm going to be just fine missing a workout. You know, same thing with guilt with a meal. Oh, I've just like totally gorged myself. It's no big deal. I just adjust it or balance it over the week. The difficulty becomes in like the over justification in like several days, several missed workouts, several servings of deep fried bread pudding.
There was a football game on Friday night and a UFC on Saturday night, and then it was conference on Sunday, and then it was and you can always make excuses.
And it keeps going.
That's why, I mean, talking to Jill, she was trying to like settle on a diet. She wanted to settle more on a way of life.
Yes.
Because if it was a diet, she knew. I mean, she could do it, but she wasn't gonna. It wasn't gonna stick. The weight would come back, and so it was, let's settle on kind of a new way of life. And I feel like, as you're saying, it has to be, number one, realistic. Like, I understand there's people out there that just eat nothing and kale and other stuff. Like, that's just not, like,
it absolutely
food is
has
joy.
to be
Good food
sustainable.
You're
right.
There's that phrase, like, nothing feels better. Wait, what is it? Nothing tastes better than skinny feels, or something like that?
Yeah, so nothing tastes as good as feeling fit feels.
Right, that's totally not true. Have you tasted extremely good food?
I know. Right.
I'd be willing to put this to a scientific test of the amount of endorphins that get released over a super expensive steak and a molten lava cake than it would just being fit and ready to go.
And so that balance, I think, is liberating to realize there's nothing that is now off of the table.
Right.
It's all just balance. It's all just balance. And so I think just like you talked about, what is achievable once the mindset had changed, once I realized, like, yeah, I can clearly go more than 24 hours without eating.
Right.
And now with drinking, getting outside of like my religious background of fasting is not eating and not drinking. Now with drinking involved and drinking electrolytes. So some of the things that people will face when they go through their first episodes of intermittent fasting, they're going to feel a little lightheaded. Some people get headaches, and sometimes you have these hunger cravings, and so some
hallucinations. There's some
collapse. Blackout episodes. And
all very normal.
So what I found were electrolytes were fantastic. Two products that I used, and people can find whatever they like, but Generation UCAN has a powder that is like the best tasting stuff ever, and I've had
What's
it both.
the sweetener? Is it stevia?
It's stevia, and one is I think it's marketed to drink cold, but I like also heat it up and drink it like a tea, I guess. But it's fantastic. I drink the mixed berry, and the other one is made by Noon, which are just these tablets, and it's a little effervescent, and so you get like a little kick. I like the flavor in both of those, and that has essentially eliminated all of like the lightheadedness or headaches or anything that I was having initially when I was first experimenting with how this works.
That's crazy. And it's not like you have a job, selling TVs at Best Buy, where if you make a mistake, it's like some guy walks out with slightly the wrong product. It's like, you got to be on your game.
So, but there were several times that I was forced to be on my game and not eat during a prolonged surgery. So,
that's true.
So like
it would be uncontrolled.
I get into surgery and then it lasts 6 or 8 hours or something because I just need to be there, or the surgery turns out to be more complicated. And under the old mindset and watching Snickers commercials, I'd be like, I'm hangry. Right. I haven't eaten in a while. I'm going to be like upset and moody and everything. And now I realize, no, I can be totally fine. And so now, like, when if I get home and it's my kid's soccer practice and I haven't had dinner, it's not a big deal. I just go to soccer practice, and it's
Right.
this mindset that like I actually don't have to be grumpy or angry or anything. I'm totally fine with a low insulin level for a few more hours, and that has been liberating. That now I can do a really long surgery and it's not a big deal, and I know that I can still stay mentally focused the entire time.
That's a weird thing, because I think that applies in a lot of different aspects of life, where you're like, I hate to say that, like, we've been raised in a society that tells us we need to eat 3 times a day,
Yes.
which is kind of a good thing, but it's also limiting, right? Because if
Yeah.
you fall outside of that structure,
You feel like there should be side
right,
effect to that.
and you see like the Snickers commercial and stuff, it's like, oh, I'm trained to feel like, dude, I missed lunch. But like, as I said, times where I've had to like buckle down and miss foods.
Right.
When I was a kid and I got like a new Zelda game, and you'd be into it, and like
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh, when was the last time I ate? You'd be
Right.
like 10 hours ago, but you were fine, right?
Right.
You were in the zone.
Yeah.
That's why you always do a good video game when you couldn't remember the last time you ate.
You're almost grateful you couldn't drink, so you didn't have to go up and go to the bathroom.
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
And it's a weird thing, but it's totally true. It's like, are you really? And I tell my kids this all the time, like, oh, I'm gonna die. It's like, you're not going to die. Just toughen
Yeah.
up. But in a lot of ways in life, like, I don't know. Like, I like hearing stuff like this because it makes me go back. Go, okay, just because Michael Hill went 7 days without fasting, I now have to go reevaluate not just what I eat, but like other barriers in my life.
Yeah.
Like, what are things that I just have assumed have to be that way,
Yeah.
and that I get upset if they kind of fall out of that form or that structure.
Yeah.
And then, do I have to be that way? How is it? A lot of, like, my job, I was born and raised, which is good. And the thing is, it's a double-edged sword. It's helped me out so much in my life to get a degree, to go out there, to get a solid job, to work for a company in a business that takes care of me. And that was the way it was.
Right.
There was no other alternative. And then you kind of, like, jump ship and fall outside that form. You're like, well, I didn't die. Like, okay, this is,
I just saw a commercial on TV today about a new way to cook eggs. It's like this thing that cook eggs, and I was like, it's 2018. We are reinventing the way to cook eggs, and you see these little inventions in different facets of life, and you're like, how has it taken us so long to figure this out? It's almost embarrassing, but it just took somebody who stepped out of it and didn't think the same way that everybody else was thinking, or felt forced to think.
That's crazy. I kind of like this because I'm in this mode right now of reevaluating.
All right, I have another
how I do
book
things.
recommendation for you then.
Okay.
It's called What Doesn't Kill Us. Okay, so this is Wim Hof, who is, this guy that like people have been calling a prophet because he cures them of all these strange diseases, but he is a big one on cold exposure and these strange breathing methods. The guy hiked Kilimanjaro shirtless in like 28 hours without oxygen support and without acclimating.
What?
Yeah, I know. And so you watch these YouTube videos of like people doing these Wim Hof breathing methods. So this guy decides, I'm going to write this expose on Wim Hof. He clearly cannot cure people of their like rheumatoid arthritis and their ulcerative colitis and their Crohn's disease but he feels like, well, as a journalist, I'm going to give him his fair shake. I'm going to do what he wants me to do. And so he goes and he has him do this cold exposure and these breathing techniques. And that's the only thing he does. He drops 7 pounds just within the first few days.
As he walks out.
Right.
Holy cow. His pants are falling off.
Sure barely fits me anymore. And he ends up setting the record with Wim Hof hiking Kilimanjaro without a shirt, but he like talks and Laird Hamilton, the pro surfer, he like who's a Wim Hof disciple. He goes to his house and he shows up and like Orlando Bloom is in the pool doing these same like breathing methods. It's like this underground cult of people just pushing mentally what they didn't think they could do.
Right.
So he shows up and the guy in Wim Hof says, I want you to do push-ups to exhaustion until like your arms collapse and you face plant. And so he was like, well, I was a little out of shape, I thought. And so he gets down, he busts out 20 push-ups, and in his mind he's like, I really did better than I thought I was going to. Like, he's pretty happy. But he like, to exhaustion, where his arms can't do anything more. Wim Hof has him do this breathing technique, which takes like 3 minutes. It's essentially hyperventilating.
Right.
And at the end of it, you breathe out, hold your breath, and then he busts out 40 push-ups. He doubles the amount of push-ups he did without breathing. He doesn't breathe during this entire time. And again, it just breaks the barrier of what your mind has been limiting you to, because you didn't know what barriers you had available to break.
The heck, man? What doesn't kill you? What's it called?
Yeah, what doesn't kill you. It's very good. Very interesting. So, and no shortage of like fantastic Wim Hof breathing like push-up challenges on YouTube of people doing this. And so same thing, I did it with pull-ups just because I thought it'd be interesting, and I almost doubled my pull-ups. I mean, it was just bizarre. I tried holding my breath before I tried it, and it was like a little over a minute. I did the Wim Hof breathing thing because you hold your breath, and I held it for 3 minutes with like zero training. I mean, it took me like 4 minutes of watching the video.
In fact, this is kind of a crazy story, but I know the kids these days, these kids doing this popular stuff, but they were doing this like hyperventilating thing that would allow them to hold their breath for a long time. And there's a swimming pool like right across the street from my brother's house in Texas, and kid died. A lifeguard died because they were doing it. And I guess your brain doesn't recognize you need to come up and breathe. Yeah. So it was like during one of the safety breaks, because they pull all the kids out of the pool every hour for 10 minutes. Lifeguard goes in. My sister-in-law was actually in the hospital because I can't remember what my niece, my nephew, they broke an arm or something. Yeah. So they were in the hospital, and the family came in with the kid. The kid just died. He went in there and just held his breath for a long time, and they didn't know when he was coming up, and he just
So
just drowned.
In this book, when they're at like Laird Hamilton's house, and they've got like this whole workout routine under the pool, he was like, everybody get in pairs because, and I can't remember what the euphemism was, but he was like, they're blacking out essentially. And they're like, one guy pushes himself more than anybody else with the weights. You're like doing these weight things underwater. And it was Orlando Bloom. And so now they call him Bloom Outs because he would like routinely just hold his breath and pass out, and then somebody else has to pull him up.
I expect nothing less from Legolas.
From Legolas. I mean, bring him down. Bring him down.
He knows it, man. Holy cow. All right, I'll have to check that out too. As far as restructuring the way you think. That's not too bad. All right. So, so segueing in from this, so I'm going to have to do all these different challenges. I'm going to have to like go without food for a week. You have to do push-up challenge. I'll report on all this stuff. So that'd be cool. But as far as so I've watched a lot of the embeddeds.
Yes.
And all that. There hasn't been as much stuff this go around for this Conor fight and Khabib fight because I think Conor's like, you know what? If I'm doing this, I'm just going to come and fight.
Yeah.
Seems like he's kind of, which is weird to say he's over the promotional stuff, but I don't know.
I think in a way he is. So clearly, historically, he has done a fantastic job of promoting himself. Press conferences, psychological warfare, doing all of that. And part of it was to promote it, I think, for sales, which I think he's less concerned about.
Right now.
But also, I think he realizes the stakes of this fight, and I think he's just felt like, listen, I'm not flying all over, I'm not doing all these press conferences, I am like hunkering down and focusing on this fight, and for me and my legacy means more than like how many pay-per-view sales he gets, because he's less motivated by the money now.
That's what Rogan and Brendan Schaub said today, or I listened to, it was yesterday's podcast or today's podcast, I was listening to a little bit of it, and that was basically what Brendan Schaub said. He's like, I think he knows he's in for the fight of his life. Yeah. And he needs to kind of hunker down, and I think he used those exact same words, and make sure this one goes off flawlessly because he's picked himself a fight. He was putting it on a little bit during the press conference, but there was no fans there, right? It was closed. That was just press. It was weird.
In my opinion, the worst setup. Dana White said it was crowd control. He just didn't want the crowd to get crazy. And I think Schaub in that interview with Joe Rogan said, I'm not going to go to that fight because I'm afraid for my life.
Right. And your wife's there.
And my wife and my father-in-law are going. My wife can probably hold her own, at least in her own weight class. And so I think she would be okay. But the crowd is going to be nuts.
It's going to be crazy.
She has been undecided on who she's cheering for, but she also didn't want to side with anybody for fear of being stabbed by somebody from one of the other countries.
I would just the same thing.
And even if you paint your face like half McGregor and
then wear the big
and wear your Khabib wig, you're still going to offend somebody. And so she's just going to go with a generic UFC shirt.
That's good. Is she bringing a sign? She can do a sign?
She's going to take a sign. She was originally going to take a Montana flag because Sean O'Malley was going to fight, but then he failed his USADA testing.
That's right.
And
He
so
did. I
he's
saw that.
out. So she might just have to get some other flag from some state, from some other fighter. She really wants to make it on TV for at least,
I
half
tell you,
second
man, our
clip.
idea for that one sign, I think,
Yeah.
is the go-to one.
I think it's pretty cool. She's gonna go as a daddy-daughter date, and I don't know. I think it'll be.
So I'm assuming she's going to go there from like the very first fight, like she's watching the
Oh
whole
yeah,
deal.
absolutely. Yeah,
She should be yelling. Because honestly, if she makes a lot of noise in the prelims, she
Right.
can get on camera.
right.
For sure. At least her voice can.
Yeah.
For sure she can.
So that's pretty exciting. I think they're going to have a fantastic time and go. I think the fight is going to be outstanding. The fight card is outstanding. I can't wait to see it.
It's like it's amazing. You have a fight card where you're like, oh, Ferguson Pettis, like, oh, that's happening. Like you don't even like
Right.
like they pop up in embedded. I'm like, what are they doing here? Like, I want to
Right.
see Conor. And like, it's like no, that is an
Yeah.
amazing fight.
Yeah. So it'll be really interesting to see. They both look fantastic. They both are in their prime. They both have such incredible fight IQ. Stylistically, it's just a unique matchup, and I can't wait to watch it.
What was interesting is they said that it's a nightmare matchup for Conor, but like it's also a nightmare matchup for Khabib.
Exactly.
Which is the weirdest thing ever.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to my brother-in-law. So my brother-in-law, he was the last UFC fight he saw was in this basement. It was the Conor McGregor fight.
Yeah.
He was visiting. So he loves Conor McGregor. So he's hosting the fight. And I was texting him last night. He's like, so what do you think's going to happen? I was like, look, this is one of those where, when you say it could go either way, but I think a better way of saying it is if these guys fought 10 times, it would probably be 5 for Conor, 5 for Khabib. It just depends which one of those matchups it's going to be.
On this night,
Right.
So you have things like the World Series where you get to go 7 games, or you have the Super Bowl and it's all down on one game, and that's what we have here is a Super Bowl fight.
But it's like a Super Bowl that starts in overtime.
Right.
It's kind of like what it is.
Exactly. So we only get like this one glimpse at it, I mean, maybe they can juice it for a rematch or something.
Which is crazy when you think of a guy like Khabib who has never lost a round. That doesn't make sense to me.
I know.
It does not make sense. Now you can chalk it up to, okay, it's the way he fights. He doesn't take a lot of damage because he wrestles and then he dominates in wrestling. Yeah, but in 26 fights and however many rounds it is, probably almost 100 rounds, maybe not quite that much, but 75 rounds or whatever it is, you're going to get caught.
He's really only been rocked once, and then he just destroyed the guy. I mean, like one time where he just got like a little knockdown and shaken up, but he still won the round. I mean, he still won the fight. He just mauls people. He's so
that's the thing. So I went back and
relentless.
watched recent fights I went back and watched the what's the wrestler's name that McGregor fought? Mendez.
Yeah.
The Chad Mendez fight and the Michael Johnson Khabib fight. So Mendez had McGregor down on the ground for the majority of those 2 rounds.
Right.
The second round, he had him on the ground for 4 minutes.
Right.
And then McGregor pops up, poof, and just starches him, and he's out. So part of it is like, well, has McGregor? It's hard to do MMA math, I know,
Right.
but has he's matured since then?
Has he evolved?
Mendez is not a slouch when it comes to wrestling.
Right.
I mean, he's no Khabib, but he's really good. So then I don't know. Then you start playing these scenarios back and forth. It's like if Khabib, who has never, as you said, never really, maybe been rocked once.
Right.
So if he gets hit harder than he's ever been hit,
Right.
how is he going to react?
What will it do to him psychologically?
Because you can see guys that you're like, I thought that guy would dominate, and it's like,
Yeah.
he got hit once. It's like, why isn't that wrestler going for the takedown? It's like, well, you're not in the ring, and you haven't gotten punched in the face 10 times, so it's easy for you to ask, why isn't he going for that takedown? Because he's been leg kicked and punched in the face, and he probably doesn't want to have it happen again.
Right. And in the book, The Fighter's Mind, they talk about that some fighters, they get knocked out once and they can never recover because all of a sudden the confidence of, I now know what it feels like to be truly rocked.
Right.
And so you try to build a fight camp that will simulate that for you, but you also don't want to get knocked out in your fight camp on a regular, basis, although it sounds like they do, obviously.
You see Khabib's like all black-eyed and stuff?
And Conor in his thing, he's like, zygomatic fractures and maxillary fractures, you don't want to be that guy's sparring partner.
Yeah.
And so they're doing it, but I think, when you are amped up in the situation and all of a sudden it doesn't go just the way you visualized it, and you are rocked. It shakes you.
Right.
I'm just really curious to see what happens.
So who's it going to be? What's your pick?
I don't know. If I had money to put on it, I would probably go with McGregor. I think the caliber of fighters that he has fought in the past, his fight IQ, and his calm equanimity in the situation will probably rule just a little bit more.
Yeah, because Khabib's fought, I think he's fought 10 in the UFC. So out of his 26 fights,
Yeah.
the first 16 could have been good. I don't know.
Have you seen the write-up of his first 16 fights?
No.
Oh, so, and again, I read it from somebody who was clearly
Pro Conor.
either pro Conor or anti Khabib, however you want to
whatever.
look at it.
Yeah.
But the first 16 fights were not really that tough for him. In fact, even like his 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th fight, he's fighting people that have like an 0-1 record or a 1-2 record. People that are still...
And I don't know if it's a Russian thing, but I remember people saying Fedor was the greatest fighter ever to live.
Right.
Fedor is not in the top 10.
Yeah. Right.
At least he's not in my top 10.
Exactly.
Right?
Nevertheless, 26-0,
fights.
and his most recent fights are, you cannot argue the skill level when you look at his most recent fights. So is his overall number a little artificially inflated? Are his first 16 opponents not up to the same caliber as McGregor's first 16 opponents? I don't know, maybe. But where they are right now is so neck and neck.
Right.
I just can't hardly wait.
Yeah, because I think you do have enough fighters that go 10-0 and 15-0.
Yeah.
Right. I think Bisbee, Machida was there.
Yeah.
Who was there? Just Colby Covington was there. Who was the guy that TJ Dillashaw fought? What's his name? Did he beat twice? The Dillashaw.
Oh yeah, Garbrandt.
Garbrandt was there. Right. There's enough guys that are there. But that said, as you said, if you look at the last few fights, you're only as good as your last few fights, right? And they're
top
they're
notch.
killing people. Right. They're embarrassing people.
Right.
These are just the moments I've been I was talking to my brother-in-law and I was like, I'm starting to get nervous. I'm starting as if I'm fighting. Like Brendan Schaub said he doesn't like watching fights because he feels like he's going to get in a fight. And it's like that weird, vicarious sort of reaction.
I mean, there's
when you
a lot
start
of times
thinking
when
about it.
I'm watching a fight and realize that I have not been breathing for the 3 minutes. We're 3 minutes into the round and I've been just barely getting the breath in.
Even if I never vocalized that I wanted Conor to win, I kind of feel like, if he wins, it's going to be this embarrassment. I was like, who am I getting embarrassed for?
Right? Yeah. Oh, the guy only has 150 million now.
Yeah.
What's he going to do?
It's fair, your guy lost. But
yeah.
Another reason why I want Conor to win is life will be infinitely more interesting with a Conor W.
For the sport, I want Conor to win. And that's just because there's some rumor, and I don't know how much validity there is to it.
Khabib's going to retire?
That Khabib wants to pull a Mayweather, beat McGregor, and then retire with a perfect record. Which, how old is he? He's what, 29?
Yeah, he's not old.
Yeah.
I don't think he's in his 30s.
And so for the sport, it would be better, in my opinion, if Conor wins just for perpetuity of the sport.
Yeah, but it's even bigger than that. Because even if Khabib stays on, he has a fun, but he's not Conor McGregor as far as personality goes.
Right.
Conor can he laid low in this fight, kind of lay low. But imagine if he got a Diaz 3,
right?
Which he said could happen. A Woodley, Ferguson.
Yeah. He's danced around the Ferguson issue, but I mean,
St. Pierre. He wants Anderson Silva. He wants There's some crazy stuff. And there's just be so much fun.
Fantastic fights available should the W happen.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I'd actually be really interested in is a St. Pierre Khabib.
Oh,
they both
absolutely.
have a very similar. That's a similar. I'm going to wrestle you. I'm going to kind of grind, pound, and just see who would win out.
Right.
Because I don't really see.
Yeah.
Again, other than the couple times St. Pierre got caught, I think he's very similar to Khabib. He doesn't lose a round. He goes 5 rounds. And he comes out looking totally fine, and the other guy's just beaten.
It's going to be hard because GSP, I think, only is interested in beating up people that he feels are bullies or have called him out. And it's not Khabib style.
No,
he's not gonna offend him to the level of how do you pick on a Canadian?
Come out of retirement.
Yeah, you're gonna make fun of a Canadian, Canada, to get him out of retirement to fight. But I could see GSP being interested in Conor McGregor,
I definitely could.
just as like a humbling token of
Yeah.
I want to make this happen.
Because he could come in and be like, oh, he's threatening. He wants to say he's got the greatest legacy of all time. Let's find out.
Yeah,
whether or not
exactly.
you do. Oh, see, that would be so sweet. It would just
Right.
make selfishly, I want McGregor to win because my life gets more interesting.
Right.
Because my vicarious, my living through the experience just becomes more interesting.
That's right.
It's just, yeah, I hope, I am more nervous for this fight than I've ever been for a fight.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
It's this weird thing when you get out of sports and you get all the stuff and you're just some dad and you're just schlepping through life and you're like, I'm gonna live. My body like latches onto these things and then like dedicates old emotions to it.
I know it's a lot healthier for me. So I played athletics in high school, but I was basically just dirty. I was small for basketball. And so I just learned to like wrap up people and get away with whatever the refs would let me get away with, which is a really poor skill set to transition to pickup games.
Yeah.
And for like the first 5 years of my marriage, my wife would not come to like my city league games or anything. She's like, you are a terrible person. It changes who you are and how you act. And so now that I've gotten out of that, my therapist says I'm getting much better. I can live vicariously watching other people and still get my high out of
awesome.
the athletic.
I don't have to put my body on the line at all.
That's
This
right.
is sweet. Yeah, I am so jacked for this fight. But I think so. I'm going to pick McGregor as well. I'm going to say it's either going to go one of two ways. I don't know. Sean was saying how he thinks it's going to be this big war, 5-round war. I really do think it's either McGregor starches him in 2, or Khabib takes him to the 4th and the 5th and puts him away. I don't think it'll go the full.
Yeah.
I think if Khabib's controlling it, I think he'll put it away.
I don't think it will go the full 5 either. I think they both have so much respect for each other
Nothing's going to happen in the
that,
first round.
that we're not going to see much in the first round, which actually, if I were in Khabib's camp, I would say go out and maul him from the start and put on the pressure right away, because the longer the fight goes, the more McGregor is going to figure you out.
Right.
And figure out your motions and your timing and your distance. And if I were Khabib, I would go right out and start to maul him from the beginning, because I think the longer it goes, the more Conor will figure it out.
That's
But in
the one.
But in the 5th round, if you are Khabib and your endurance is going to be Conor,
weathered the first 4.
If you can weather it, you might wear him down and take him out in the 5th round just because you outlasted him from a cardio standpoint.
That's why I just keep thinking that Conor's movement's different, and I would say better than anyone Khabib has faced.
Yes.
And Khabib's not like the most head movement. He's not a Ferguson.
Right.
Right?
Right.
He's not as shifty and whatever else. So he's probably going to get cracked in that first round.
Yeah. And you look at like the footwork and the unorthodox movements of McGregor, and he is completely different than anybody else Khabib has fought. I mean, he just is. He's just not orthodox in the way of a predictable movement, and his footwork is just outstanding.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so pumped.
Okay, so you're cheering for McGregor. If you had money,
I'd say McGregor in
you'll still put money on McGregor.
I think so. I mean, again, this is like, I wholeheartedly admit I could be wrong. It's not like McGregor second round till I die. Like if Khabib comes out, I won't be surprised.
Yeah, exactly.
If Khabib beats him, but I do think if I was going to put money on it, I would say McGregor in 2.
Okay, and Ferguson Pettis.
Pettis is I don't know. We haven't seen Ferguson in so long.
Yeah, coming off of a surgery 5 months ago.
Pettis is one of those guys, though, if you think of the fighter mindset, and he even admitted it and embedded. He's like, I could do no wrong, and then I started to lose, and then it happened again. And he's kind of been, you looked at his record, I'm like, man, he's doing a co-main event. Let me see how he's done. Yeah. He's like, I think 3 of his last 6.
Is he coming off of a 2-fight loss?
I think he's coming out with I think he's won his last one.
Oh, he did win his last. Okay, yeah.
So I don't know. I would say obviously the ring rust, and Ferguson's got a fresh surgery.
5 months. Yeah.
Yeah. So
which is pretty crazy.
He's so good.
El Kukui, man, the guy is absolutely crazy. I mean, I think that is not debatable. He's absolutely nuts, and he is fun to watch. So I'm very curious.
They both move.
Yeah,
really cool.
I mean, Showtime is Showtime for a reason. They're both so fun to watch. That is also going to be.
I hope that goes the way I think it's going to go.
Yeah.
they're just doing like
windmill kicks
Right.
and
Crazy 360 elbows and just like crazy
Superman
stuff.
punches. I want to see more jumping off the fence. I want it to almost mimic a WWE fight. You're just
Someone
like,
throws
did
a
he
chair
just
in
tag
there?
somebody? Like, what's going on here?
Clothesline.
Yeah, curl up and grab your legs so you can't be pinned. Like,
How about the last time where we had 2 of the same knee lock submissions?
yeah, like we had never seen
Only
it.
one time.
Again, it's like
25 years.
Somebody's sitting in the locker room, they're watching it, and they're like, I think I'll try that. And then just come out and do it.
See, that's another perfect example. You just change your mindset, and all of a sudden
I'm
it's
stuck
possible.
in this position. I'm going to reach between my legs, grab the heel, and bring it forward and put them in a knee bar.
It's the whole 4-minute mile thing, right? It's like, but why? You would think, going like with that and with the 4-minute mile, you have all of humanity trying something.
Right.
That someone would have just been born like, I'm not going to sort of pertain, I'm not going to adhere to that. But it's like, no, you need to be shown first. And then it's like, oh, okay.
And
what does it unlock? What does it change? But it does change something,
I
right?
mean, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they talk about it as human chess. But it also has these very strict rules of you want to progress, right? From being in guard to side control to mount. And so I think maybe those that are coming from these other backgrounds, whether it's Sambo or Tai Chi or Chi-Tudo or Krav Maga, some other martial art that just makes you think about it slightly differently than a traditional BJJ background, and you feel like, all right, I'm not going to go through this same progression,
do something different
and I'm
here.
going to look for an ankle, whereas somebody would say, no, roll your hips to the right, and you're thinking, I'm going to grab my ankle, I'm going to grab his ankle, and go hips
Skew my
left,
legs,
and go
right.
hips left, and see what happens. And I don't know, it's fascinating to see the evolution of the sport. Original Gracie, you're talking about different modalities. How would a boxer do against a wrestler? But now they are true mixed martial artists, but they're still coming from their individual backgrounds, and that's what is allowing the sport to evolve.
Yeah, I remember listening to an interview with George St. Pierre, and he's nervous about all like the new guys coming up. They can do all this crazy stuff. I'm like, you're George St. Pierre. Right. You have nobody on earth to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And still, he's like, man, they do all this crazy stuff. He's like learning from the younger folks.
Yeah.
I think that's people to stay at the top of their game. But that's why I feel like McGregor has a way bigger edge over Khabib, because I just feel like he's more in tune with like movement coaches and different stuff.
Yeah.
Where Khabib, I think, is more.
Yeah.
I mean, has he gotten a black belt in jiu-jitsu? I think he's just a crazy dominant wrestler. He's got some weird genetic advantage over other human beings to wrestle well.
And he's so relentless in his pressure.
That everyone talks about, like, he wrestles with heavier people, and they're like, he just feels heavier.
Right.
He's like, he's like some sort of X-Men character that can
like
change his mass.
It's his hip control. He can
It's weird.
It's the training with bears.
It's got to be the
obviously.
Bears, man.
Yeah.
It's got to be the Bears. That is the secret. But yeah, it's all right. So we'll pick it up after I'll either bring my recorder to the fight, or we'll just do it, day after or whatever else. But
Perfect.
We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm
I love
going to dive into this more. I'm not going to go all crazy, meditation, different astral plane stuff. But I do want to kind of knock down a lot of these barriers that I've kind of just randomly put up in my life.
Start fasting now, and then come.
I just did have a massive dinner.
Break your fast at fight night.
I can do it. Yeah, I had a massive steak and potato dinner tonight. So
perfect. You're
the
good.
Camel's
You're
hump
good
is
for a while.
is on full. But I could do that. It'd make my. You know what? My one downfall is, and this is a mindset thing. So I'm driving up to Havre tomorrow.
Yeah.
I
keep something to keep
I
you
like
awake.
having drinks.
Okay.
When I travel.
Drinks. Another great book is The Warrior Diet. Now, this came out in 2002. This is like Ori, I'm going to slaughter the name, it's like Hofmelker or something like that. But this is like essentially intermittent fasting, but he came out with he released his book in 2002.
You can drink soda the whole time? Dang it.
You have underfeeding periods and overfeeding periods. And so he talks about like fresh fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and everything during the day, and then you have one meal at night. But anyway, for driving and stuff, I'm like, oh, that's perfect, man. I love my almonds. Like, I'll just eat my almonds and shell my cashews, and that way you stay like mentally fresh or whatever.
This could actually work though, because my biggest fear is that I eat something funky before I go do school visits, and then halfway through I'm in front of like 300 kids, and also like, it's like, oh dang it. So if I go in on empty stomach, it's not gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
So I can do it.
Yeah.
I can do it. I just have to get like.
I'm giving you some electrolyte tablets before you leave.
All right.
You're gonna be all set.
I can do it. I'll do it.
Perfect.
So I'll my wife will think I'm crazy. What day is it today?
Today's Wednesday.
Today's Wednesday, so I gotta go to Saturday.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Oh, you know what's gonna hurt?
So let's hear it.
It is movie night. That's because what I do is I'm off caloric soda during the week. I try diet, but I only ever drink half a can of diet. I can never stomach a whole thing of diet. And then Friday nights I have Dr. Pepper and popcorn. The real
Dr.
Pepper.
Okay. Here's the other thing that was an eye opener for me in the obesity code. Foods and things that trigger an insulin response that are still calorie free. Diet soda,
doesn't it?
Still triggers an insulin response.
That's what I've heard. I'd heard something similar.
And there's been several studies that have come out that say there's weight gain even on diet soda, and you're like, well, what is going on? But the thing is it still stimulates, and are all artificial sweeteners. Even if you're looking at like honey or stevia or all artificial sweeteners will still trigger an insulin response. Now, some more than others.
Right.
But diet soda, like aspartame, I think was one of the highest ones, and that's in most of the diet sodas, will still trigger an insulin response. So you eat dinner and have it with a diet soda, and you have now sent your body the signal, raise insulin and store everything I'm going to give you for the next 45 minutes. And so whatever you're eating, now you're just like going to put into fat stores. And so that's part of the warrior diet actually too, is start out with the most bland foods and then work your way up to like the flavor rich foods. And I think it's mostly because you're going to get full on the other stuff before you get it. But probably, and he didn't realize this, or at least hadn't discovered or talked about it back in 2002, was that approach probably limits your insulin response, which is probably part of why he had so much success with it. So anyway, so a lot of times we look at the glycemic index for diabetics of how much insulin are they going to need, but what we should be looking at is the insulinogenic response to foods. And there are a bunch of charts out there, and you just look at what causes insulin. And so now I'm eating better than I ever have,
right?
In terms of like steaks and meats and fantastic vegetables, and eating to satiety, but picking foods that don't cause such a high insulin response. So I'm eating more, even though it's in this compressed window, totally getting full because fat in foods, healthy fat in foods, makes you feel full way easier. So you're not eating as much. I mean, you have like a block of cheese, you're not gonna like eat the entire block of cheese. You eat what you feel like eating, and then you stop eating it. Whereas a bag of potato chips, like you never get satiated. You just keep eating, and but it's all about insulin response. So
it's crazy, man. Like even because of the weekends, I'll have like the real Dr. Pepper, and it just opens the floodgates. Like Dr. Pepper's like, then I want to eat fudge, and then it's like, then I'm like looking through the pantry, like what else is there? I was like, but I was fine during the week. Like I didn't crave it during the week, but then like you have the one, and it's just all downhill from there. All right, well. I'll figure something out. But I think
recap in a few days. I'm excited to hear about it.
All right, very good. Thank you, Doctor. All right, so we are back. First half of this podcast episode was a little over a month ago. I didn't mean to split up quite that much, but here we are. It is the beginning of November. UFC 229 is over with, so we get to kind of look back. And before we broke, I got challenged to do a bit of intermittent fasting.
Yes.
So I jumped straight on into it.
How'd it go?
With zero preparation. I literally was handed some things as I walked out the door, which was great because they kept me going. And then I had a big drive up to Havre to do school presentations for the day. They did have lunch for me there, so I actually ate a sandwich. But over the course of 3.5 days, that's all I had.
Yeah.
The sandwich and then
Nice.
a bunch of those electrolyte tablets, and then tried the bone broth. It was good. I got about 2/3 the way through the bone broth, and I was like, I can't drink any more bone broth. Like,
So my brother sent me some other bone broth, and I didn't make it 2/3 through it. There's clearly like this spectrum of bone broths that are out there.
I wonder if it's like different bones, like a lamb bone or a human bone.
We have lamb and chicken and beef. And Monica's friend made some for us, and that was the best bone broth that we'd had.
The homemade bone
It was
broth.
like truly homemade.
So she like went in the backyard and
Yeah.
killed a chicken.
Slaughtered the neighbor's dog.
No, she got a rotisserie chicken and got all the meat off and then.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's a little more.
But it was very good. Lots of vegetables and herbs, and
Super good.
the flavoring was fantastic.
So I dropped, because I was in the 190s, and I never wanted to be in the 190s, because I'd never gotten there, and then
Yeah.
the last couple months of work, I'd like kind of ballooned up into the 190s. I never thought I could even go there.
Yeah.
So it got me out of the 190s. I think I dropped 7 or 8 pounds, and I think I jacked my neck. I think we made the joke right before. Yeah, I still haven't returned to working out, because my neck is still killing me.
Yeah.
So I'm doing all sorts of different stuff now. So I haven't worked out in a month, but I haven't got back up to the 190s. I'm a solid 186, 187. So I took 7 pounds off, and
you've actually
stayed there.
kept it up. So two things I hear in your story that are kind of, the beauty of the intermittent fasting. Number one is you were offered food at this thing, and you just embraced it and rolled with it, and then you make up for it later. It's like the most flexible of the lifestyle adjustments that you can make that are still healthy for you, and two, that your success was completely independent of exercise. That it really is
it really was.
food intake related rather than exercise
I
related.
thought I was going to go, okay, I'll pile back on the water weight, I'll be back up in the 190s, and I just kept kind of step on the scale, like kind of wincing, and I was like, oh, all right, still 190s, okay.
Yeah.
Now I want to do another sort of tranche. I'm going to start working out tomorrow.
Yeah.
Last week I interviewed my buddy Bruce Pitcher, who dropped 200 pounds on ABC's Extreme Weight Loss.
Yeah.
And he's kept it off for 5 years. He's come out with a book. Anyway, so I talked to him, and he talked a lot about clearing your integrity, is what it is, which is like, okay, if I promise you something, I'm going to fulfill it. But if I promise me something, I'll never fulfill it. Like, I'm going to get up at 8 o'clock and you sleep in, because I'm the only one I promised it to.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to eat this, and then you eat it.
Yeah.
So he says a lot of it is clearing your integrity. So, clear my integrity here. I have not worked out the last week, or the last month. Wish it was a week. Last month, my neck still hurts, my back hurts, but I'm going to try to go bike.
A
I'm just
bike.
gonna go bike.
Yeah. Good
Because
choice.
I got that bone spur in my foot, and I could run, but it's just going to it gets worse every time I run.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't get a surgery right now. It's not really a good
You
time
could
for me.
come shovel the snow off our driveway. I think that's probably the best thing for your.
I just roll my back into my neck. Let's go around shoveling snow like that guy in Home Alone,
Yes.
the old guy. So I'm gonna start tomorrow. But it was cool. It wasn't once you got into it, and you just sort of accepted this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Then it wasn't. I mean, it's not like I didn't want to eat food, but it wasn't going 3.5 days with just a half of a sandwich. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it would be worse than it was.
What made you ultimately stop?
UFC 229.
Oh yeah, we got together and we had to eat. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
I was like, oh no, and then I went to town.
And then your thoughts on electrolyte tablets?
So I was gonna get some of the other ones that UCAN stuff because I had the UCAN here.
Oh yeah,
it was really
it's
good.
really good.
The other ones were okay. It wasn't as good as the UCAN stuff, and so I had all been prepped to order it, and then I kind of just forgot and haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But in prepping, because I told Jill, I was like, I should do this once a month. I should go like 2 days or 3 days just to kind of reset myself, because it helps with everything. Kind of helps with like clear your gut a little bit and just sort of cleanse. So I'm gonna get the UCAN stuff, and then I think I'll do it once a month. Maybe the first of the month, end of the month, or something.
Yeah. I think it is nice just as a regulator for your system that when you step on the scale and you're just like, I need a couple of days of this, and it's just push you right back.
Clear on out.
Step on and I go, I'm almost down to what I swore I'd never get up to before.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's exactly where I was at, because I remember my old high was 188. I would kind of get up to 188, promise myself I'd never get to 190, and then I would back down. And now I'm back down to like 188. I was like, I'm 188. Yeah, this is sweet. And now it used to be like, yeah, that was the bad zone. But I like to get comfortably below 180 and stay there.
Yeah.
In the 170s. Leave the 180s behind, and then I'd be good. So that's the plan. Start working on it again tomorrow, and then introduce this kind of into the system. My other buddy, the one that dropped 200, he's all about macros. He's all about counting, and then when he goes on vacations, he says memories over macros. So he just plans to break his plan, and then he has a new plan. So you don't feel bad about binging, because my plan is to go on vacation and enjoy myself.
I think if you lower your expectations,
that's right. It's a constant
overall happier in life. I mean,
it is a constant adjustment of expectations.
Principle.
But it's similar. It's similar to how you can kind of deviate from intermittent fasting. Once you screw up, you're like, yeah, okay, I'm not gonna beat myself up. I'll just readjust.
Are you doing any other like body composition testing besides just the weight, as far as like your water or muscle or body fat percentage or anything like that?
No, I would. It'd be interesting to do it.
Yeah.
I'd have to go have somewhere I could do it for inexpensive.
Well, I mean, you can buy the scales that you stand on. It's like $25 for the scale. And
how accurate are those?
Bioimpedance. So you've got a few options for checking your body fat percentage. You know, bioimpedance is inexpensive, setting on there, and it may not be accurate, but it's consistently inaccurate.
Right.
Which means that if you're just following trends, you know, if you're going from 12% body fat down to 10%, it may not actually be 10%, but it's 2% less than what it was, whatever it's off by.
Yep.
And then the other would be, you know, a pinch test to buy the little
I just
scale.
can't imagine that is accurate. The guys with the big old like clamshell looking things, and it's like,
and then
what if I just got a bunch of skin? How do you know that that's not just thick skin?
That's actually what you're
fat?
doing, is you're checking the thickness of the skin with the underlying fatty tissue underneath.
What if I was just a thick skinned guy?
Well,
ripped,
emotionally.
thick skinned.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you see those people, the people where you can see the veins bulging on their muscles, there's enough of them that are not thick-skinned that I think the problem is not the skin.
I swear it's the skin, dog. Yeah. What are you giving me a hard time for?
And then the other option, of course, would be like a DEXA scan, but those are like $150. And then there's the one, I don't remember what they're called, you go down under the water and it
I think my wife, I think Jill did that in college because she was in exercise science.
Yeah.
I think they had to like go get the whole. I
So,
swear they did.
But it's hard to
that up,
know which one is really accurate. You know, I mean, how do you say like, oh, well, this one's the accurate one? I mean, they've all probably got some quirks. I think overall, it doesn't matter what you use, so long as you are just following trends.
They need to have someone do one, have them immediately die.
Yes,
and
autopsy.
Autopsy them up, so like put the fat over here.
Yes. Yeah.
Some guy's got to do that. It wasn't like the father of internal medicine, some crazy dude who would like keep people open and like study their innards and stuff, and then close them back up. I swear there's a story.
There's a lot of
crazy
people,
morbid people we owe a lot to.
There was
saving millions of lives.
There was a guy that had an injury where he had his stomach open to the outside of his skin, and the guy would tie pieces of string around meat, different types of meat, put it in his stomach, and then test it over time and see how his digestion was. He paid the guy. He actually hired him and paid the guy to do it. And then I think he later sued him for something, saying it was like unjust, treatment, because he would make him. I mean, he basically treat him like a slave. Like, no, you will now digest my broccoli for this amount of time. But yeah, we've learned a lot of things from pretty crazy people.
Yeah.
I think. So.
Well, there's a positive message for all you crazy people out there.
That's right. There's a home for you.
In the history books. All right, so the thing that broke my intermittent fasting was UFC 229.
Yeah.
Monica was there, and I mean, I remember getting the texts because you started meeting a bunch of fighters. And I was like, man, you're having such a good weekend, and it just kept getting crazier and cooler, and we kept getting pictures, and we kept being more jealous. So tell us about how that was to be at one of the biggest events, the biggest event in UFC history.
It was really exciting. You could feel it, and everywhere you went there was posters and people, and UFC does a great job of having a fan experience, so they sent me texts and let me know where everything was, because I have Fight Pass. Like, they sent me texts in the morning saying this is when you can go in, like this is where the fighters will be, like this is when everything's set up. And so it was just exciting. And then there was, everywhere we went, there was people we knew, like Sugar Sean O'Malley. Like, I didn't think we'd meet him because he wasn't on the card, but he was there with Misha Tate doing interviews in a bar that just was right outside.
So were you just like seeing signs? Like, it was like, I kind of picture like being a kid in Universal. You're like, I just want to do as many of this stuff as I can before we leave.
Yeah.
Let's fit this in. Let's fit this in.
It was, well, and it was just so well organized. Like, you knew where everything was, you knew what time it was happening, and they ran it like clockwork. Like, there was a lot of people there, everything was organized, they had the lines, like, just set, and the fighters were so nice. Like, I don't know if they have, like, prep training for meeting so many crazy people, but they were just kind and good sports.
So run us down the list of everyone you saw.
TJ Dillashaw, Mike Perry, Gaethje, Kat Zentana's Kat was there, but her line was really long and full of like creepy guys.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I didn't like.
What an unfair
I know.
experience for the women fighters of the world.
Yeah. Then you had the Motown Phenom.
Yeah. What's his name? Why am I blanking on all their names?
And then.
So you meet all these fighters.
And then you
going
met
up to
some other fighter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I got to meet the Eagle.
after, but coming up to the fight. So you meet all these fighters. You go in there. Were you there for the prelims?
Yep. We were there as soon as the doors opened, and we were in line with a bunch of people. So we're all waiting, and then they open it. You go through security, which was insane. And then a bunch of people there, I don't know where they bought their tickets, but they didn't work. All of a sudden, when it said we could go in, like my tickets flashed that, okay, it's active now, and a lot of people...
Oh, we just updated on your phone. It was like,
yeah,
you can now go
there
in.
was no physical, it was all on your phone.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So people were sold bogus tickets that were electronic
But
tickets.
they told us, be careful where you buy them.
Yeah.
And there were scalpers out all over the place that
Yeah.
morning, and just everywhere.
Even when the fight was announced, but before tickets were on sale, you could go on StubHub and Ticketmaster, and there were tickets available to purchase, and the tickets hadn't even been on they weren't even for sale
Yeah,
yet.
there was no way I was touching that. I thought it was cool. They had a store outside, and the line to get into the UFC store was like they only allowed a certain amount of people in, and that was the craziest part we ran into.
Really?
Was the store. And then because you had both fans going in, and there was Khabib side and then a McGregor side, so it had both fans in it, and people grabbing shirts and like all of this stuff. And so that was like the first time I started to feel the tension between the two sides.
Over merchandise.
Was in the merchandise section. But then we got in, and it was great. There was more stores inside. We weren't allowed to, any drink that you had to have it in a cup because they were afraid of people throwing stuff. So which they did. But it was there weren't a lot of people there at the first. Like, it was just real
She got
quiet.
there with Anthony Kiedis and Chris Pratt, who went for the prelims.
Did they?
And they were hilarious.
The whole time they were
Yes,
in?
I loved watching them. They are true fight fans. Like, it was a delight.
So how far
to
away
watch
were
them.
you from them?
A few sections, but close enough that you could see their faces and see what they were doing. And Chris Pratt was just loud and funny, so you could hear him.
The whole time. So he was there prelim.
He was there.
I'm sure you can hear him a lot easier in the Fight Pass prelims because the stadium's empty at that point, so you can hear him.
It really was like, and then it's weird because you don't hear any commentary, so it's silent.
That's so weird.
And
You're just watching these two guys. Like,
yeah. You can hear when they go down to the ground, you're like,
so
boom.
weird.
Yeah,
So you were watching fights for like 6.5 hours.
Oh, it was awesome.
Because from 4 to 6, 6 to 8, 8 to 10:30 or whatever, right?
It was great. Yeah, it flew
Holy
by.
cow.
Like, it was amazing.
Think of how clever the UFC is to promote things. So the fighter experience to meet the fighters is just open to the public.
It's free.
Right.
So not charging. I mean, can you imagine going to an NBA game and then you've just got all these other NBA stars that are just standing in lines that you get to go up and meet? Like, we don't have this interaction,
You
with
even
the
go to
athletes.
like a Comic-Con and it's like some B-list star from some WB, series, and it's
TJ
$50
Dillashaw?
to get an autograph with the guy or a picture with him.
And here, TJ Dillashaw, and you're just like, hey, we give a shout out to Billings, Montana. He's like, absolutely,
Yeah.
you know, and gives a shout out.
The
to
title
Billings,
holder,
Montana.
one of the best fighters on
Yeah.
planet Earth.
Right.
He was so nice. Like, genuinely, like, a good person. You had to be 21 to meet him because he was, like, in a beer garden. So luckily,
just because of how he
luckily
is.
I was over 21.
Just someone, gotta be over 21 to talk to this guy.
I thought that was funny.
So then the fight breaks out. After the fight, McGregor loses. So did you see any fights in the stands?
No.
So you were pretty.
They had that all under control. Like, they shut that down really quick. Because everyone was okay and started yelling, but then when Khabib's team started attacking McGregor, that's when it could have gotten out of control. But immediately the ushers came down, like everything was under control, like no one was moving forward. And then as soon as they had Khabib out, they had all of us leave. Like it
They
was,
just followed the whole
it was never. They handled it really well.
Because I heard these comments. You hear comments even from Rogan and a couple of people. Were like, yeah, it was crazy. They had all the security, but they should have got more. And you interview Dana White, and Dana's like, no,
There's no
we had
way.
plenty of security.
Like, maxed
No
it out.
one could have
Right.
accounted for Khabib jumping the fence.
Right.
Right.
And what were you gonna do? Tackle a guy? You're gonna take him to the ground inside the ring as
Right.
some big, overweight usher guy? No,
Right.
he's gonna get past you.
At least my section was very calm. I don't know how. Well, they kept having Irish people come and try to take seats, and then the ushers had to come and like move them out. And somehow all of
Just
them
the
ended
Irish.
up over. Once they found out where fighters were coming out, they all were over there. So they kept trying to move them, and then they would go back, and they would all be right there. So they should switch tunnels maybe or something.
Just keep on guessing.
Once they figured out what tunnel it was, they were all.
It's like taking
right
different
there.
routes, because when people would fly over to like Iraq at ExxonMobil, you would have like different routes depending on the day to like confuse the terrorists and stuff on how to go.
Yeah, they
It's
should
like
have
which
thought
tunnel
of
they're
that.
coming out of. Just get some anti-terrorism group to, yeah, that's crazy.
But I've never experienced anything like that. The feel of it was awesome. Like,
Yeah, I bet the energy
yeah,
there
I
was just
couldn't-
nuts.
And then, they all started stumbling in for the Ferguson-Pettis fight, and then it got really loud and very exciting.
So it wasn't until then that everyone was kind of in the.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Can you imagine? I mean, the price of some of those tickets. Can you imagine paying thousands of dollars, going and getting drunk in a local bar to stumble in for the last like 1.5 fights?
Or like you fly from
Right.
Ireland or Russia.
Right.
Who was there more Russians or more Irish?
Irish, I
Irish.
would say.
So she also, I don't think I told you this, she got to hang out with Michael Bisping's father.
Yes.
Who also like flew over with a friend. But you think of like how far you'd have to fly and then just like not show up for most of the fights.
Well, the people down on the floor, they must have had something amazing back behind, because I know they have meet and greets for the VIP section. So I don't know who was in the VIP section, but whoever
Who were they meeting and greeting?
great.
Anyone
I
more
don't-
impressive than TJ Dillashaw?
I know,
the
I know,
current belt holder?
Maybe TJ was there for them afterwards, and I would have been in there too. But they had better snacks than us, and they were dressed nicer. Like we all were like, not my class of people, but
Yeah.
they're
No,
having a good time.
that's awesome. So then afterwards, the next day, you're at the airport, and we all get a text on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all get a
So then
text.
10 a.m. 10 a.m. the
And
day
just-
after the fight.
Just the normal airport. You're not in some like secret wing
Nope.
where the private planes take off.
Nope.
And in security, right next to you is
Khabib.
Khabib.
Yeah. Well, so it's right before we enter the security, before like he's saying goodbye to a bunch of people, and I'm like, what is going on? And so I started looking around, and I was like, this is amazing. And the guy next to me says, is that Conor McGregor? And I looked at him, and then the guy,
You just turn and
and
slug him.
then, and then the Russian guy next to me looks at me, and he's like, that's not Conor. And I'm like, I know, it's Khabib Nurmagomedov. And so he sees that I am okay, and he lets me pass. And Khabib is there by himself in the outfit he was in.
Yeah, that's what it
when
looked like.
he
He's just
did-
like in his
yeah.
sweats.
And he looked terrible. I'm sorry. I like him a ton, but he looked terrible. And I didn't know what customs were, and I didn't know if I could shake his hand or if I could be close to him. And I just said, can I take a picture with you? And I said, great fight last night. Congratulations. And then we take a picture, and I go, and we are in the same line, and can't believe it. And I get to the front, and she's like, well, you can't be in this line because you're TSA pre-checked. And I'm like, well, okay,
So
doesn't matter.
you have like something that Khabib doesn't? Like you're allowed to go through?
So he
Sorry,
was,
Khabib,
he
I'm
was
going.
in the normal. They were like, you have to go to this special line. So I was like, oh yeah, okay, I guess I'm saying goodbye. So I went to the special line, which is really long, and got through. And I went and I got on the shuttle that takes you to the gates, and he got on that shuttle.
On the same
and
shuttle.
Was right next to me. Our shoulders touched, and I acted dorky. Like I just was like trying not to be stalker, but I couldn't stop smiling. And he had a big group with him, and there was a woman there, and she kept looking at me smiling. And she was with them, and I was smiling, and I was like, I don't know who this is. And then afterwards, we just went up, and I sat at my gate, and the guys across from me were talking about the fight, and I had on a UFC jacket. And they're like, did you go to the fight? And I said, I did. And so we started talking about it, and then he started saying, well, my son, Michael. And I said, well, who's your son? Because he was English. And he's like, well, Michael Bisping. And I was like, oh, like, no way. So anyway, so we talked conspiracy theories with Michael Bisping's dad, that he felt like it was all staged and planned, and that, you know, the Conor McGregor thing was planned and all of this stuff. And it was just really interesting. But
So you sat there waiting for your plane. Because he was on the same flight.
yeah, he sat behind me when I got on the flight. He was like, I guess we're meant to be by each other. And I was like, yeah. So anyway, yeah, it was unbelievable.
That's just nuts. That's nuts. That's like if you had planned that out. I love these thoughts in hindsight going, if I would have stopped and told you before you left, by the way, you're going to bump into Khabib in a place that's public, but it'll feel private. You're going to have a one-on-one conversation with him away from the arena. You'd be like,
No way.
what?
There's no way.
How does that play itself out?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I can go to another one.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, you can't go anymore? That would just be a huge disappointment.
It'd be hard, though, because that fan experience,
Was cool.
yeah, it was great. I wish I could write to them and just say that. That was really special. For someone that's a fan, those fan experiences were...
You could write to him. I remember in third grade, we all had to write a letter. And I wrote a letter to like a company. And someone wrote a letter to one of the milk companies, like a local milk company in Utah. And they got free box seats to the hockey game.
What?
To the like Utah Grizzlies hockey game. And I wrote it to Elmer's Glue because they had this glue that stunk real bad, and I complained about how much their glue stunk.
You got double stick.
And they sent me a check for $3.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little check.
So
So you can write them.
I
You never know.
I find it
should write
very
them.
easy
Snail
to
mail.
give easy feedback. I recently was on a Delta flight that got delayed and I got pushed, and the stewardess was incredibly nice. And I just went on Twitter on Delta's feedback thing, so it's not a public post. I just
Right.
sent it to them. They sent me a $100 voucher to say thanks for the positive feedback.
I will now
Yes,
compliment every single one.
You absolutely should. I have a brother who's like got a gift in it, and but he regularly writes stuff, and he gets coupons and free stuff all the time. I think society is so thirsty for positive feedback.
Right.
Then what happens? They're just like,
What? This is great because it's never been easier to give feedback, and we probably give feedback more than we ever have, but none of it's positive.
it's all negative,
It's
and,
all
and we
negative.
all have this sense of anonymity that, like, even though my name's attached to this, I
It's
still
a
don't
picture
know.
of me
I
and my
still don't
family.
know this person, right?
That's crazy. Yeah, it's hilarious to go, like, any video game that comes out, any movie, any reboot, any post on Facebook, and the first 100 comments are just people turning to shreds.
Yeah.
It's like,
Aw.
every single one. Sometimes I just scroll through just for kicks and giggles.
Yeah.
We like to criticize things.
Oh, my
Poke
favorite
fun
thing
things.
is to do hotel reviews. I love to read hotel reviews.
Have
Those
you?
are hilarious.
I should say, did you ever read my hotel review? For when
No.
we went to Fort Lauderdale, when we went to, so we went and did a cruise out of Fort Lauderdale. This was back in February. And we stayed at a Motel 6, and we got up there, and it was, we pulled the sheets back, and just pubic hair.
Oh, gross.
Not cockroaches, but pubic hair. So I went downstairs and, asked them to change the sheets, and they were just, they start yelling in the back room, "You gonna change those sheets? I'm not gonna change those sheets. I just barely changed those sheets." And I'm like, "I'm right here. I can hear you. That guy up there, you saying it's not clean?" So I'm like, "Fine, I'll clean it." And they just I just kind of watched, and I took pictures of it all. And as you walk upstairs, the little baseboards were just like a strip of neoprene that was duct taped to the wall. There's just this big pile of garbage just on under the stairs with cleaning supplies. You go, our lock on the door was just the one that you just kind of flip over, and it was had no screw in it, and there was a pair of tweezers stuck through the hole. It was ridiculous, ridiculous. So I was like, all right, I'm writing a hotel review. So I just put all these pictures in there of this big long review.
Did Motel 6 contact you?
No. I think they just said, sorry for your, blah blah blah. What was the review? I just read it again. They just said the same thing. Oh, Abby's haircut at Great Clips here by Albertsons. She's like, I want it. I'll show you these pictures. Have you seen the pictures of her haircut? She's like, I want it like lightly sculpted around my face. It looked like one of those haircuts when your kids get all the scissors when they're 4. I'm not joking. It's that bad. It was like cut. You look at it and my profession is to describe things with words, and I can't describe this with words. Like, it is so bad. So I posted these pictures, just wrote this big old long review, then they're like, oh, and then they're like, yep, we'll contact you, and then I got an email saying, it's actually owned by a franchise owner, but I sent a message to the franchise owner, and then nothing. So Abby had to go get it redone by Chelsea.
She's great. She's redone a lot of haircuts for us, too.
Yeah. So.
For the Chelsea winter haulers out there listening, I would love a coupon for that public shout out.
Hopefully next one's free. All right. So I think the main crux of this episode is, I think, kind of knocking down these mental barriers that we put up. And part of it is around, like, even some of the ones that I look at, like, that's not a mental barrier. But as we were talking about in the first half, is like 3 meals a day. 3 meals a day is a good thing, but it can also be a mental barrier. Like, if you don't get those, you're conditioned to be angry. You're conditioned to do this. And so you kind of knock those down, and life sort of opens up a little bit. Yeah. And then the reason why I like the tie into UFC is you look at people, and I listen to a lot of these people through Joe Rogan and other stuff, who are able to push their bodies to like crazy limits, and you see what they're able to do, and you're just like, that is crazy what a human being is capable of doing. They have a lot of support and they dedicate their life to it. But it's cool because I think they're on sort of that frontier of pushing their body to new limits and doing anything from yoga to meditation to different dieting to different supplements and all this stuff to kind of see how your body responds, and deprivation chambers and all this cryotherapy. It's really cool stem cell stuff to see how it could be applicable in sort of our lives. And yeah, I'm not going to be shredded UFC fighter, but
you've got something in you. You just haven't tried it yet because you just don't know.
I just don't know.
Trying it.
I should get I actually thought of, after hearing one small tidbit in a Joe Rogan episode about like heat shock proteins from saunas and how you live 7 years longer or something if you every single cancer and all these other diseases were cut in half by people that regularly used saunas. I was looking up buying a sauna from Costco.
Sounds good for me.
I was like, what's it about? Yeah.
I think Ben Greenfield, who writes Beyond Training, has the pros and cons of hot and cold. And I don't know. It's a fascinating time to be alive. There's so much that we know. There's so much more that we don't know, and it's going to be exciting to find out what is going to evolve. We're gonna stop treating cancers with surgery, and we're gonna stop recovering from being sore with an Advil. There's going to be all these things that we're just going to be shocked that we never thought of that before.
Mine's stem cells. I want to go to Panama and get flipping my back and neck injected with Wolverine juice.
Yeah, you should.
And metal claws.
There'll be a link to the GoFundMe page for the Stem Cell Panama project.
Here we go. Make Mike great again. Return to the glory days. Let's come back all shredded. How was you fighting in UFC 242? No. All right, very good, Hills. I appreciate your time and all your crazy journeys. I know you guys do a bunch of stuff. We need to have more. You could do service projects all over the world, and
life is good. Life is good. Next one's Vietnam. We'll give an update on what happens in Vietnam.
When do you take off?
In April.
Okay. Yeah. And if you're looking for Michael Hill, you can find him performing surgeries on people. So if you need him, get injured real bad, you're in Billings.
All you have to do is get drunk and crash your car and you'll meet me.
So if you want to hear more from him, hey, I heard you on a podcast.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Very cool.
We'll see you soon.
All right, over now.
So there you have it. I always love talking with Michael and Monica Hill. We actually stayed afterwards and talked for like another hour of a bunch of cool ideas we want to do for UFC fight nights and all sorts of crazy stuff. They were the people that I originally brainstormed. Actually, it was with Monica primarily about installing a neighborhood Hobbiton in the empty lot next to my house. So love the Hills. Monica actually came up to us when we moved in our house. I don't even know if our furniture was set up yet. She brought us over a plate of cookies. And she was like, hey, are any of you guys big UFC fans? It was her, not Michael, who asked us the question. I was like, yeah, because I'd been in Australia for 3 years and hadn't been able to watch a lot of the fights because of the time difference and everything. And there began a wonderful and rewarding friendship between the Thayers and the Hills. So going back to kind of what I talked about with Michael as far as like preconceived ideas and barriers that we put up. It's a weird thing, but society has a lot of them. We touch on a little bit of that whole 3 meals a day thing. That like you would think it's not a bad thing that society has conditioned us to want 3 meals a day, and that if we are to skip a meal, we should be angry. But it does. It kind of holds you back because when you're into something, when you're playing like a video game and you're loving it, or when you're doing anything else that you love, and you skip a meal, you don't care. It's not the end of the world, right? It's not the end of the world to go a whole day without food. But we're just sort of conditioned to be grumpy. I'm a little bit hungry, so I should be angry. I should be jumping on that. We're kind of conditioned to, medicate pain and to jump on pain and not really embrace it. But I'm very interested in taking a look at my life now that I'm reinventing myself and kind of looking at where do I have all of these preconceived barriers up, and where can I knock them down, and kind of look behind them and investigate the area behind them and see if there's any satisfaction or joy or value in exploring those areas. So it's cool. I like people like the Hills, to kind of people that want to show the way, kind of grab the bull by the horns and not be afraid to try something new and something a little bit different, and to kind of give it their all. People that are very dedicated, like last week, you have people like Bruce Pitcher, who have a lot of personal integrity. They have an idea, they want to do something or try something or explore something, and they do it, even if the commitment is only to themselves. And then they keep that commitment. And that's what personal integrity is all about. So I'm trying really hard. In fact, my one big, it's huge here, but my one big trial, my test of personal integrity, is I'm trying to move back to 1 alarm. I usually have 2 alarms in the morning. And what ends up happening is I just cycle between the 2 on snooze. I want 1 alarm, no snooze button. Because that is like the ultimate measure of personal integrity and commitment. Is that I set that alarm the night before, and then I'm going to obey when that alarm when that alarm sounds in the morning. I've done the math. I know how much time I'm going to get, how much sleep I'm going to get. So when I'm going to bed, I set that alarm. I've got to trust that that's when I'm going to wake up. That didn't used to be a problem back when I worked for a corporation, because I got up when I needed to be at work. Now I can work really late into the night if I'm kind of going well, and then that, kind of throws off my whole sleep schedule. So trying to get back in more of a routine. I actually worked out today for the first. I said I would. I said I would in the interview, and I did. So I'm back on track, folks. Anyway, that is the podcast. Please answer the call next week, as I will always issue it every Wednesday morning. The call for all nerds. Okay, see you later.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Calling All Nerds. To find out more about Mike, his novels, blog posts, videos, and everything else interesting, go to mike-thayer.com.